Now, the pact known as Aukus will see Australia giving the technology to build nuclear-powered submarines. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said it showed that the UK's readiness to be hard-headed in defending its interests. She went on to say that the UK's new security agreement with the US and Australia will now make it safer and could create hundreds of new jobs. However, France, whose own submarine deal with Australia has now been scrapped, has openly criticised the agreement, calling their ambassadors in the US and Australia. Now, China has also accused the three powers of creating a Cold War mentality. So joining me now is our foreign affairs specialist, James Marlowe. James, so talk to us. AUKUS, what is it?
Well, the first question to ask is, why has France gone nuclear over this?
No, what is AUKUS? No, that was the first question. What is it? Some people don't even know what it is.
Well, AUKUS is the alliance now between the Australia, United States, United Kingdom, and it's all about this nuclear submarine deal. It is a positive thing because, of course, the fearfulness that China seems to be putting around many countries around the world, and specifically in the South Pacific area, which is known as the Indo-Pacific area. Let me just give you some background on this. This was a deal that was signed by France and the Australians in 2016. It was a contract, and the contract specifically said that France would build submarines. They were diesel submarines, a little bit noisy, and it wasn't completely invisible, the submarines, below certain altitudes.
Right.
But nevertheless, this was good for Australia at the time in 2016. There was a clause in there that said if either party broke this contract, of course, there'll be millions and millions of compensation, as you would expect in any business deal. Now, what has happened is that Australia specifically says that it's not that we've changed our minds, it's just that our needs have changed. And since that time, China has exerted its authority across the South Pacific, the Indo-Pacific area. It's taken over smaller islands against international law. It has the largest navy in the world. It has a very large army. It does not understand the meaning of the word human rights. Of course, the Uyghur Muslims, if you're a Chinese person, you can end up in court and in jail without any type of trial whatsoever. And it's a big concern about what China is doing. It's using its economic influence, also in this country and many other countries around the world, buying up economically universities and ports, specific ports around the world. And this is a big concern. So the Australians came along and said, you know what? We're concerned about this, so therefore we're going to go to America and see about getting a new type of submarine, not the diesel submarines that we plan to get from the French, but we will see if we can get some nuclear submarines. The Americans then contacted the UK and said, would you like to come on board with us? So now this is a three-way alliance as such between the Australians, the Americans and the United Kingdom. Now, questions are being asked as, well, why did the Americans go to the UK as opposed to the French? Because the French already had the contract. So the answer seems to be is that the connection, the intelligence sharing and the understanding of British towards the Australians is much greater than the French, because we have a closer cooperation.
That would make sense, though. I mean,
we fought on the same side many times.
The British are sort of, the Australians are the British immigrants, aren't they, ultimately? Because British people went to Australia.
Yes.
We sent the criminals there initially, and now, of course, it's evolved, and there are lots of British people, and we have a good relationship.
Yes.
That would be true.
We fought on the same, well, of course, the French have also fought on the same side, the East-West fighting, which has taken place in the past. But as Tim Marshall, the foreign affairs expert, pointed out very eloquently this morning on GBNews, he specifically said, and I agree with this, that it's no longer about the East or the West. It's no longer about the Americans and the Russians as such. That was the 20th century. We're now in the 21st century. And what I think we're going to see is the countries specifically joining together as an alliance to protect themselves against what they perceive as a certain type of threat. So, for example, you have already an alliance between India, Japan, Australia and the United States with regard to trade agreements, etc. If the UK can get involved with this, that will be very, very good. But again, questions are being asked as to what has made the French so angry. They will get millions and millions in compensation for this. Of course they've lost the deal. Of course you'd expect them to be.
So why are they angry then? And especially, they shouldn't really be angry at Britain in any way, because it's not really, it's Australia who have broken the deal with them.
Exactly.
It's not the British. So we have no We're not going to turn away somebody who says we want to do a deal with you instead of them. That's fine.
Is it because that perhaps the French are still angry at Britain because they voted to leave the EU? And not only did they vote to leave the EU in June 2016, but they actually implemented it with Boris Johnson's new 80-seat majority as well. And the French are still very angry about this. So why would you bring in the British, is what the French are saying, as opposed to us?
Well, you see, that's
You've lost the deal.
Yeah, that's interesting, because they shouldn't really be angry at the British, because it's the person that did the deal with initially has decided not to do the deal with them and would prefer to do it with the United Kingdom, which I'm very pleased about. It's wonderful. This is a fantastic thing for the UK, right?
I think it is. I do agree with you. And the reason why is because that we do have to stand up to China, because no country seems to be doing this at this point as well. And we also, many countries are a little bit concerned about the leadership of the United States at this point. Not the military and not our relationship, of course.
That's ironic, because they were less worried about Trump than Joe Biden.
Yeah.
That's the irony of it.
Even Joe Biden, who spoke a few days ago, couldn't even remember the name of the Australian Prime Minister.
Oh, God.
And we're really concerned about whether it's not even 9 months into his presidency, and we're really concerned that he's got another 3 years and 3 months to go. And so we're concerned about the Commander-in-Chief of the United States, but we're not concerned about our relationship with the United States. I mean, we go back many, many years, and this relationship is a relationship that I don't think can ever be broken. So we're very, very close. But nevertheless, alliances are being made. I mean, let me give you an example with regard to how the Australians feel, because their oil comes directly from the Middle East. And it's shipped over to Japan. It's refined in Japan. From Japan, it then goes to Australia. Fantastic. What happens if China decides to block that route? Australia's completely cut off from its oil. It needs its oil. So these are some of the concerns.
But how have they managed to get themselves in that situation, that they are beholden to one person? Because the first rule of business is, as I learned, I did a business degree, was never put all your eggs in one basket. So how have they made themselves so vulnerable to China?
The Australians? With this, the argument as such really occurred since COVID-19 broke out, because the Australians were asking very difficult questions as to where COVID came from. Did it come from a laboratory? Can we send in a team? Can we get more information? In fact, they called for a conference on this. And the Chinese responded very aggressively towards Australia, because they said, you've got no right to ask us that. Never mind, it's nothing to do with you. It's all under control, and forget about that. And that's when the Chinese Navy started to exert its authority in the South Pacific, in the Indo-Pacific area, taking over these islands and threatening Australia. I mean, for example, it decided to put on, I think it was around 200% tariffs on Australian wine.
Right.
That has just completely destroyed the wine trade from the exports to China from Australia. So there's clearly tensions which are taking place, and this, as you say, I think is a positive deal. It's a right deal. It's where we're going in the 21st century with regard to alliances, and we shall see how it unravels in the coming weeks and months.
And for the UK, when would this deal start to be put into practice? Because it would mean jobs, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would mean jobs, but the main thing is getting these nuclear submarines confronting the Chinese Navy. This is what's concerning the Chinese. I mean, they didn't think this was going to happen. It will, of course, create jobs for all of us, but that's not the main reason. The main reason is to prevent a threat. I have to tell you that my driver, who driving up here, just said he doesn't like nuclear weapons.
Nobody likes nuclear weapons.
However, I believe that nuclear weapons have prevented a Third World War. And the proof of that is in 1961, the Cuban crisis. Had it not been for nuclear weapons, the Russians, the Soviet Union at that time would probably have not backed down. The Americans put pressure on them. We could have lost a third of the globe at that point. The problem is, we don't want to use the nuclear weapons, number one, and the fact that it might fall into the hands of tyrants or radical Islamists or some bad people, the people that we used to see on the James Bond movies.
Like Joe Biden.
Well, The fact that it's not just one person that has the right to go ahead and push a button, it's also done with the head of the military. And
well, it's interesting you say that, because when Trump was in power, people were saying, well, no, he's got the hand behind the thing.
And they were wrong.
It's not true, is it? There's a whole military decision. But then this decision that Joe Biden made, though, in terms of Afghanistan, everyone's blaming it solely on him.
Yes, because he did a very stupid thing. He pulled out the troops, and then he realised, you know what, we've left our 40,000 of our citizens still in the country, let's put back the troops.
But it must have been a bigger decision, not just made by him, is what I'm saying. It couldn't have just been him making that decision.
I'm not so sure. I can't see the American military actually saying that, let's just pull everyone out. Oh, you know what, we forgot 40,000 troops, plus the 100,000 plus of all those Afghans who helped us so much and put their lives at risk. Let's put back 5,000. It doesn't make sense. And the fact is, they never even spoke to us. They never even spoke or liaised with the British to say, this is what we plan to do. You could have stayed for another month. You could have stayed for another 3 years, provided you made it very clear to the Taliban, if you hit us, we will hit back, which is exactly what Donald Trump said.
Well,
just very briefly, Canada has got an election tomorrow. Justin Trudeau decided to call an election in August. He thought he was going to win. It's a minority government. The system works over there very similarly to how we work in the United Kingdom. Minority government, he did a kind of a Theresa May type of thing. Theresa May did it in 2017, thinking, right, the question is, has Justin Trudeau made a mistake? Because he was leading in the polls. He's now slumped quite a lot because he said to the Canadian people, let me make this about COVID. This is an approval rating of how this government is doing in terms of how happy you are about COVID. His ratings have gone down. The polls are sending down. He looks like he might just get in, but he might lose some seats. The main party, or the opposition party, is, of course, the Conservative Party. Aaron O'Toole is his name. And he's a new leader for the Conservative Party, and they have many, many parties. But if some of those parties would perhaps merge with Justin Trudeau, it would be gone. And finally, the Russians. Third day of voting today, third and final day of voting today in their parliamentary elections in Russia. Many questions being asked as to the irregularities of the posting of ballot box.
See, the problem with the postal voting in some places is that that is the easiest way to fudge things, isn't it? If you're going to fix anything, it's the postal vote that can do it.
It's not just the postal vote, it's actually the person's vote can do it as well. So I retweeted something out just a short while ago of somebody, it picked up on one of the cameras inside a voting booth, and it specifically looks at one of the inspectors hiding behind where the actual box that you put the voting slips in. It's very close to one of the booths. Somebody's gone behind the booth. He's actually putting like bits of paper, the voting slips, into that. Another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. So the inspector is hiding behind it as such, and the camera's picked up. Something's going on. So this is why international observers are saying that it's high irregularities are taking place. Don't expect any surprises in the Russian election. Putin's party will obviously get back in and have the power because that's how it's been rigged. There could be some surprises in the Canadian election, though, and we'll have to see what takes place with regard to the Australian submarines or nuclear submarines. But it's a good deal for that.
It's a good deal.